Hey fellow skeptics, Lester the Skeptic Tank here. Just going to do hopefully a quick gloss through of of OFBiz. Let's see if it will take my login that I've established. Still up and running, very cool. I should do a better job of closing things down entirely, but I know I've been doing my build out and I think I've shown my initial struggles, but many tries later, I think I've gotten the hang of it. The list build out, especially when you're starting from scratch, this is going to be, I have to admit, this would be better done in a team based effort because there's a lot here in OFBiz. A lot. Number one, working with IT. Number two, working with bookkeeping and accountants. But from my personal appraisal at this very point is I've got my list built out. The only hope is that the integration will be to a point where I can see the results in a report. So I'm going to walk through just the stuff I was wrestling with. So one of the things, if you're doing a build out for the first time and you want to test this, I don't know how many people are testing this, to be honest. It's just going back to this idea that I want something that is sustainable. And I don't have to worry about, one of the things businesses worry about is, I don't remember the exact term, but it's like fixed costs versus variable costs. We want to be ahead of what our costs are. So in my build out, at least for me, and I can, because of my experience with QuickBooks, I can use it to such a point where I can track everything, pretty much my life. But since this is more of a personal thing, I can actually realize or can make use of this reality. I'm going to have a lot more vendors than I do customers. And yes, when you work for someone and you receive a payment from them, aka your salary or your hourly wage and your paycheck and so forth, and as you build your equity within that company, you are kind of building your personal brand. I remember something from a former football player, Chris Carter, and I received it in a certain way, especially when salaries, even for his time, were pretty, I don't know if I would say wild, but you could be a millionaire during his time. I forget if he retired in the early aughts or the 2010s, but I just know that when he was playing from late 80s or early 90s up until the 2000s. Anyway, his phrase when he talked about, especially when free agency in the NFL became a really big thing, something stood out when it was what he said. Talking about, this is Chris Carter Inc., that once you reach free agency, you're pretty much putting yourself out there. Now, the difference is some people want to be that way. They want to be a free agent because they realize they have a sense of value. So for that, these teams are trying to bid for his services. So in a sense, yeah, you're kind of like a contractor in certain ways when you get hired by a company. You're trying to see who you can, who would be worth working for. as a prospective employee of a given company. So you kind of put yourself out there, you know, with the various platforms, LinkedIn, Indeed, etc. I don't know if Craigslist is any more successful nowadays. I haven't used LinkedIn. A lot of my success has been word of mouth, thankfully. You know, knowing people in the right places. But I've used Indeed. I got hired through Indeed at one stop. But you can treat that hiring process as like you can push yourself out there, put yourself out there with your resume. You know, funnily enough, I was told when I was working for Nike at the time, do you got a LinkedIn profile? Yeah. Well, I'll build it up. So I did that, build it up, yeah. So I started building it up, and especially with the company I'm working for now, it was very important that I had a pretty good LinkedIn profile. So I did what I could. But anyway, see, it's just part of the hiring process and experience. So without further ado, yeah, I'm likely to have at least one or two quote customers. Now, understanding the reality, I'm going to have many vendors. I don't know. You know, these are early impressions. I understand list build-outs are going to be a thing, especially when you do it from scratch. I will have to give credit to QuickBooks where it's due. Basically, list management is easy. So you can see it right here in Party. This is the way you develop your contacts. Now, I realized and I learned this, and I still don't know if it works out the way I think it's going to. So anybody other than these types, I still don't know why this is here. I don't want to make a heavy judgment call, but QuickBooks has its way. For the QuickBooks veterans out there, you probably know what I'm talking about. The list build-outs are very straightforward, particularly when you have that presentation in QuickBooks for Windows. So at the very least, to its credit, I just have to put in two entities, okay? I got to put in a first name and a last name. And the reason why I put it that way is because I'm aiming to put something into my stuff. So, you know, like stuff like this, and it's like, that's my invoices, but I'm going to try find vendors. So this is what gets me. And I don't know what this means for the integration or the communication among the elements in this. I still don't. And I'm not sure how I'm going to feel, because I don't know what this is going to mean for me. Because when I create an AP-based invoice, accounts payable, which is like you're trying to procure a product, service, whatever, from a person, and they send you a bill. You know, you can use the terms like I mentioned, using the terms interchangeably. But I don't know what the point of this feature is. Because when I set them up, I have to use that person, and I have to attach it to something. So I'm just going to give a quick run through, and I can just hit find, and I have a vendor list, right? So it's just, okay, that's cool. But I don't know what it's going to be for moving forward when I look at reports. I still got to build it out. I still have my AP invoices I need to build out. But it is what it is. I think there's some strengths to it. Again, this is a free product, and yes, for those developed IT folks who have some sort of programming experience, there are various things, at least based on documentation, that you can utilize to make it more robust. And I'm just doing this from the standpoint of a guy who just wants to find the elements that I can put together and make it work for me. Because at least for this, I think I can build my list the way I want to. The interesting thing is how it all look when it's all put together. Because you know, because of my experience using QuickBooks, I have an idea of how I want a list to look like. I kind of know enough to be dangerous. It's just a matter of, will I have an accurate reading? And that's one of the pain points I've noticed with a lot of QuickBooks customers is you put the list elements together and then the numbers may not be what you would expect. But part of that is also in how you set up your list elements and the tracking components that a specific business would require. So I'm going to see what I can do here. I'm going to go into catalog. I think that's where I want to go. Catalog. Right. I'm going to try to find products. I'm going to just hit find. Okay. So I do have two items. So as far as quantity on hand tracking, I haven't gotten that far. Now, like I said, I know enough to be dangerous, and like I said, because of my experience in QuickBooks, I have so many ideas. I think there was a discussion on Facebook about tracking someone's sacraments. I'm thinking, I can build a QuickBooks file around it. So I can actually establish something with respect to the various attributes. Like I can go in new product and I can do all of this and product type. You have all of these. Like I said, the potential is here. I just don't know in terms of like if a C-suite personnel, that's usually, as I understand it personally, it's those in this chief executive, chief operations, etc. A lot of times people in those positions take a bird's eye view, and part of that is reporting. I'm still trying to build it out, and then I suppose once it's all said and done with some of the transactions I still have to enter, and then see if I click on reporting, that it will give me numbers that I can trust. And I think that's one of the things, especially in my experience with a lot of the conversions I do for my work, that I wonder, are these people setting up their company file right? But that's not part of my project scope or project charter. We're not responsible to scrutinize. We do have other places and pieces in the company I work for that help with that process, and it's on the client or client to be to want that, if they want that to be part of the package, if you will. But for me, I just have to make sure the numbers they have match. But at times when I do look at the numbers, I'm like, are they really setting it up correctly? So I do appreciate that these types are already built out, but look at all the options. Digital good, finished good, service. That's going to be interesting if I want to put in a customer invoice. If I were to do a build out for a church, and I would say this would be in a humorous or half joking fashion, because it would be kind of, I don't know if it would be a slap in the face, but it would be kind of absurd to provide a parishioner either a packing slip, a service order, or something of some sort to point out, okay, this family, this kid's going to get one confirmation, one baptism on this day. And the funny thing is, it'll likely be invoiced to zero, because all the time that I've been through the church experience, we never had to pay for the rite to be done or the ritual to be done. But so far, this looks kind of cool. I'll say that I'm liking it so far. As far in terms of, I don't get the sense there are any real list limits, and that's usually going to be determined by the storage space available where you're housing this build out. I think that's the main limitation, but it looks like there aren't any limitations when it comes to that. It's just the thing that you want to be mindful of is when you do your build out, are we setting it up correctly? Because I still don't know what I think about that. But as far as party, I only have one I set up as an organization, and that kind of was my hurdle when I wanted to create an AP invoice. I still am working through that. So like that might mean I would have to do some homework on scripting or programming or whatever commands I need to issue. So let's go back to AP, or I'm going to just do a customer invoice just as an example. So invoice, you're going to note, at least here in this space, this is going to be interesting because it's not as distinct in terms of invoice versus bill. So I can go in and I can main invoices. I can create a new invoice. Okay. See, I needed to set up my organization, and I had to go into. So let's go back to the main accounting area. So one of the things I learned, I forgot about since I touched OFBiz last time. I don't know how many years ago it's been since, but I would go to organizational, and I would have to add this. So as soon as you make your party an internal organization, you can add them as an internal accounting organization. Then you can set up your chart of accounts, and then you can that enables you to set up your transactions, particularly when it comes to accounting. So I'm going to go back to AR. So with that, I'm able to make I can start the invoice creation process. And I can find, and I didn't make any customer invoices, I'm aware. But having that, interesting. Sales invoice. But I do find it intriguing, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so order looks to be a different bag altogether. Order received. So order manager, I do find this in part. So it's going into order entry, returns, reports, and stats. So let's do this for example. New request. Okay, interesting. Request for feature, request for I can say requesting party. Who did I add as a client? I'm gonna find. Oh, and apparently I can choose anybody from here. So interesting. I thought I had. Oh, I do. I have other people. But basically, I can add someone, and I can put that in, and then sales channel. So a lot of things you can use for tracking. It's just trying to get used to finding where you need to go to get what you need. I do find it here that this is where you find your order stuff, your processes, and then I can go main, find orders. I think there should be order entry. Let's see, order entry. A sales order or a purchase order. Now that's interesting. I can go in and oh, select supplier. Okay, that's that's something I might have to look in more. That's interesting. That if I took this workflow, I'd have to select a drop down for supplier. Very interesting. All right. Well, I didn't want to take too much of your time, guys, and I know I provided a demo video before, but I know I'm barely scratching the surface of this platform, and I know I'm not going to use all of that platform. It all comes down to what scope I need to either shrink or expand as time goes on. But you can kind of see the potential this product does have. And so I will say again, this is likely not for the faint of heart, but if someone's like experienced in this kind of stuff, building out stuff like this, you know, it's free, it's open source, and most of the work will be done on the back end. So any end user, once you do the build out, any end user doesn't need to worry about installing a product, worrying about multiple seats, which is just meaning how many computers are going to use the software. They're not going to have to worry about that. And the only cost, I think, of business, again, as I said in the initial video, you just have to worry about what's going to be worth your time and money to bring someone out to do the build out. But I think that's kind of the cost that one would have to undertake in order to build out something that's truly customized. Now, for myself, it may take time to figure out if this is a viable solution. Again, it all comes down to what reporting data I can pull and I can perceive as making sense. So, again, fellow skeptics, thank you for your time. I've noticed an increase in subscribership, so I appreciate that. But I'm finding the more important thing I'm looking at, comments. I like to engage and get something going, a conversation. If there's a question of what you want to see more from me, or like I said, I'll see if I can swing it. I'll see if I can provide that, and I'll let you know if I can or cannot. Or if you have questions about basic accounting, and that's pretty much what my level of exposure or quote training is, because I did support QuickBooks for a bit. We were taught basic accounting principles and how I can translate into something like OFBiz. All right. Well, until the next video, peace out, fellow skeptics, and I'll catch you guys on the other side.